Hey everybody, this is part of our full-length primetime podcast. You can check it out on Blog Talk Radio, iTunes, YouTube, plenty more. I hope you enjoy.
This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, everybody? Ricky Widmer here, along with the one, the only, Brandon Swanson.
Hey.
And Brandon, today is a big day for us. Two reasons. Number one, it's a dual podcast day. You guys may not know this because the podcasts are still going to come out as normal, but Brandon, we're recording two podcasts tonight. So for the next 2 weeks, you guys are going to see us in the same attire that you see us in for this video. First off, if you're on YouTube, hello. It is great to see your faces. Blog Talk Radio, iTunes, or Stitcher. Thank you guys for giving us a listen. But we're doing two podcasts. And the reason being is next week, you and I will not be here in Chicago. We will be in Anaheim for VidCon. So we got to do some pre-recordings. But it's also a big day because we're starting our conference previews with our Power 5 conferences. And for the next 2 weeks, for this week and next week, we're going to be doing the ACC. So how it's going to work this week is we're going to preview through the Atlantic Division. Next week will be the Coastal, and then it'll be rinse and repeat throughout the rest of the Power 5 conferences. And Brandon, I just want to get right into it. Let's get started. We got a lot of teams to go after, as there are 14 teams total in this conference, 7 in this side of the ACC. We're going to start off with the bottom feeder, and that will be the Boston College Eagles. And the big thing for Boston College coming in this year, their defense last year, really good. 8th in yards per game. They top 35 in passing yards per game, top 10 rushing defense. Didn't let the opposing team score too many points. However, the offense couldn't do anything for them. 127 in yards per game. They only put up 20.4 per game, which is outside the top 100 scoring offenses in the league last year. And that's the big thing coming in for this year. Can the defense be as good? But for me, I want to focus in on this offense for Boston College to start. And more so, the quarterback position. You guys know me. I love the quarterback position. Their guy from last year graduated, and Patrick Towles. They got a little bit of a choice to make. Do they go with the junior who's only played 12 games in Darius Wade, or do they go with what seems to be the favorite guy who impressed last year in practice, redshirt freshman Anthony Brown? Brandon, let's start off. I'm going to kick it off to you for this. If you are Boston College, what are you leaning towards? A guy that impressed in practices last year who's a redshirt freshman, or a guy who's only played 12 games, though he's a junior? Who are you going with, Brown or Webb here?
Well, Ricky, I don't really want to focus on that. I'll be honest with you. I want to first focus on the fact that this team 2-6 in the conference and 7-6 overall last year, and they're towards the bottom of the Atlantic. You take a look at this team overall, though. You mentioned some of the numbers already. They were 9th in total defense. They are in the top 10 in total defense.
And they're returning a lot of those guys.
They're number 2 in sacks. Number 2 in sacks, and they're returning Harold Landry, their leading sacker, who had 16.5 sacks last season. They have a lot to be excited about on the defensive side of the football. But then, as you mentioned, you go on the other side. Defense is not the problem. Not the problem for Boston College. However, Clemson, Florida State, Louisville averaged 51 points against them last year, and that's understandable. Those are really good teams. Boston College, not at that level, not at that tier, but offensively, which is now where we'll focus, and I will get to your point, but they were second to last. Second to last, with Rutgers dead last in total offense. They were second to last in total offense. Towles only threw the football 273 times. He completed it 138. Didn't get to 2,000 yards. Didn't even get to 15 touchdowns. His best season wasn't even when he was with Boston College. It was a couple years ago when he was a sophomore with Kentucky. Boston College needs to find it offensively. They don't have a receiver who had 500 yards. The leading receiver, Michael Walker, 33 catches, 420 yards. Also, the leading guy in touchdowns with 4. That's the problem. So you need a guy who's really good at quarterback, which now that's the long way of getting back to your point and saying you want to go with the guy who's going to bring you the best product, the best outcome. Whoever you think that is. I don't care if it's a guy who's just going to be starting for the first time. I don't care if it's a red shirt. I don't care. At this point for Boston College, you need to go with the guy who has the most promise for you, who is going to be able to gel the best with your receiving core, who really, there hasn't been a receiving core, okay? There has not been a guy who's had 500 yards, at least last season. But Boston College is not far off. You just get some production offensively, you could have a 9-win season. And you could start to compete a little bit in the Atlantic. Because guess what? Some of those games where they're giving up 51 points, if they had anything offensively, they could maybe be in that game.
Well, and I mean, you also look at the Syracuse game, the Georgia Tech game. Those are 2 of the losses that they had, single-score games. You get one more score on the board, one more touchdown, you're going to overtime possibly against Syracuse with a chance to win it in overtime. And if you had a touchdown against Georgia Tech, you're winning that game. Flip that. That is 2 more wins for your conference schedule. And the thing coming in for Boston College, I kind of threw up that question for the quarterback because to me, looking at this, I think it's more of a systematic problem for their offense because the offense that they run is a run-heavy offense. It's going to be run first and then the pass. And that is not how we see a lot of successful teams do it in college football. And the thing I look at is, okay, if you're going to run the ball first, your running back better be damn well good. But I look at the 2 running backs from last year who are coming back, and John Hilliman and Devon Jones, and Hilliman only had 542 yards for an average of just under 3 at 2.9 yards per carry, 6 touchdowns. That's your main running back in a run-first offense?
That ain't going to get it done.
What?
That ain't going to get it done.
What? And then, I mean, I look at Jones, who he did a little bit better. At least he had 4 yards per carry, but only 2 touchdowns and 336.
But look at how many less carries he had. He also had 90 less carries.
He had a ton less carries. The main problem, I would say, is that your main running back is only averaging 2.9. And I know what Boston College fans are going to say, but Ricky, Brandon, can you put the blame on them? Because it's kind of a layered system of, do we blame the offensive line? Last year, very young offensive line, they're returning 3 starters. And to me, that's where the core of this offense needs to go. If that offensive line can be stout, if those 3 starters coming back can firm up that line, they need to do something for the running game. Because if you're going to run a run-first offense, you got to be able to, A, run the ball. You better have a 1,000-yard rusher. That's the way I look at it. And you better have a guy who's got 10 to 15 touchdowns as a running back at the end of the year. If you don't have that, why are you running a run-first offense? That's just how I see it.
There's no one position that you can pinpoint and put the blame on. You can't say, oh, the quarterback, that's why. Oh, the running back, that's why. Oh, the receivers, that's why. The offensive line, that's why. They collectively struggled. All of them.
I feel bad for the defense because they outshined everything.
And it's sad because people will look at Boston College and go, man, that whole team is crap. That whole team is not crap. That whole team is very average because you have one side that's very good, one side that's very, very, very underperforming, and it averages out to be average. You take that defense and they're very good. They're stout. You take that offense, there's just not a whole lot working there. And I think that they need to be able to fix up the offensive line, find some more holes for the running backs, but they also, like you said, cannot be a run-first offense that their leading rusher carries the ball almost 200 times. And he's nowhere near 1,000 yards.
And that's why part of the reason this is going back to the first question that I asked, because I know a lot of people are probably sitting there going, but guys, who's it supposed to be, Anthony Brown or Wade, like Ricky asked? I'm going with Brown. And the reason being is if you want to run a run-first offense, let's go with the dual-threat quarterback. Let's go with the guy who isn't just going to get it done with his arms, get it done with his legs also. But more importantly to me, and this will kind of be the thing that I look at from a greater kind of span for Boston College, is I'm going to ask you this, Brandon. For their head coach, Steve Adazio, is this the make or break year for him? Because he was on the hot seat when the team dropped to 4-6 last year, and they just got blown out by Louisville and Florida State, who are good teams, but you got outscored by a combined score of 97-14. Then they win some games late, they get bowl eligible, and he keeps his job. They have a new athletic director also coming in at Boston College. Is this a make-or-break season for Adazio where it's like, hey, you know what, if we don't see strides out of this offense, I don't care if you make a bowl game, you're done at the end of the year. Is that going to be the case when it comes to the new AD and Adazio this year? Because we all know the new AD is going to have his own assessment for this football program.
I think whenever you have a new athletic director coming in, it's always interesting because it's like bringing in a new general manager. And a lot of times a new general manager wants to go with a new head coach. And even if they don't go with a new head coach in the first year, most likely if that head coach that was there previously, that predated the general manager, and they don't perform well, they're gone after that 1 year underneath the new GM. So I think that's kind of what we'll see here. New athletic director, same head coach. If he does underachieve, if that offense doesn't get any better in the defense, let's say even regresses, then I don't think that he's going to stick around there. But if there is progress made, I think that there would be no reason to get rid of him, because then that shows, okay, there's hope. He's able to turn this around. We're starting to do a little bit better, and I think that that's ultimately what could happen there. But if there really is no movement in the positive direction, the right direction, why keep a guy around? I think that you have that. I think you have that kind of cushion, just because we have to see what you got, what you've got. What do you bring to the table? And if you don't bring anything to the table or not enough, that's easily seen. And if you do, and there's more there to be had, I think that as well is easy to be seen. And it's just all about the assessment that athletic director brings and kind of what that athletic director is looking for. Because just how a head coach wants to be a more spread offense or a run-first offense, things like that, an athletic director or a general manager wants to be the same type of thing. And they're looking for a certain thing. So if they're going to say that they're going to be a run-first offense, and you have 1,000 yards combined between everyone who ran the football, you're failing. But I think that if they're able to turn that around, there are some high hopes then on the horizon for the Boston College Eagles.
Well, not just that. I mean, if you're going to be a run-first offense, you cannot rank 97th in college football with rushing yards per game at just under 150 yards per game. They weren't even averaging 150 for the season last year. And I mean, I look at the schedule, which to me, I'll be honest, looking at it early on, if I'm being generous, I've got four games where it's like I'll give you a win. Central Michigan, Wake Forest, only because they're going to be a really young team this year. We're going to get to them in this side of the podcast with the Atlantic side. And then I mean, maybe NC State and UConn. But, I mean, besides that, it's really tough sledding. You're not going to beat Clemson. You're not going to beat Louisville. You're not going to beat Florida State. Syracuse is on the road this year. They beat you. I know it was only a one-score game, but their offense, we're going to talk about their offense is really good there for Syracuse. So that would mainly be an offensive-defensive matchup there. But, yeah, UConn, NC State, Central Michigan, and Wake Forest. Notre Dame, although I am not high on Brian Kelly and the Fighting Irish, I don't think Boston College poses a threat to them. But the thing that will be important for Boston College this year is I might be looking in and just completely doubting them. But what if they're able to catch a game or two? Because the one thing I looked at today is Paul Feinbaum, who on this show has been called Paul Finnebaum, depending on how you want to look at his last name.
Tomato.
He put that the October 27th game between Boston College and Florida State at BC could be a potential trap game for the Seminoles.
Well, let me tell you, is that Boston College, again, I mentioned it earlier, they were 7-6 last year overall. They were 2-6 in the conference. Now, let's take a look. Let's see. NC State also, they were not great last year. Wake Forest, not great last year, and Syracuse. Boston College, let's say they beat two of those teams instead of, losing. And then they're not looking so bad. Put two more wins on, take away two of the losses, and guess what? You're 9-4. It's a winning season. If you're Boston College, you haven't seen 9-4 for quite some time.
You'll take it.
You'll take it, and you'll run as fast as you can,
just like your offense is supposed to do. You'll run.
But I think that overall, honestly, Boston College, they're close. That defense keeps them in games. That offense gets let's say 5 ticks better, which they really could. I think that if you have any bit of a passing game, another reason why the running game could have struggled. You start out with the pass to set up the run, right? I mean, that's what a lot of people say. You had no pass to set up squat diddly.
You had no whatever to set up whatever.
There was nothing. So
run couldn't set up the pass couldn't set up the run.
You make strides in the passing game, you'll make strides in the running game. I think that they go hand in hand to me. But I also think that they are very close. Not to being great, not to winning the conference, but they're very close to being somewhat competitive within the conference.
Well, and the thing and this is what I'll the last point before we move on into Syracuse, and I'm going to quote this from the Athlon Sports preview for Boston College coming in. They say, is that BC's ceiling under Adazio? Just basically where they're at now. Is it the ceiling under Adazio? It could be. As experienced as the Eagles are this season, don't expect them to break that barrier just yet. The barrier that you're talking about to getting into that competitiveness where it's Clemson, Florida State, Louisville, and then that first team under them where it's like, here's where the second tier starts, is Boston College. And I think if that's the thing this year, if the new AD and Martin Jarman says, hey, you know what? This is our ceiling, then that means Adazio could be on the outs at the end of the season unless it's like a ridiculously good winning season, like a 9-win season for Boston College. But before we move on to Syracuse, before I kick it over to them to let us know what they think down below, any last thoughts on Boston College?
I just say I'd love to see them make those strides because, again, they've been just kind of in the cellar for quite a long time. And when I say a long time, a couple of years, that does seem like a long time. But as far as back as I can remember, really, they have not been good in college football. But they're close. They're close. I'd like to see it happen for them.
Well, and this is where I turn it on to you guys. Let us know down below what you guys think. What's Boston College going to do this year? What are you guys looking forward to BC? Let us know down below in the comments section.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed a lot of emotion. If you want more, click this video right over my left shoulder. You will certainly not regret it.